Hello everyone, I'm Jack Fisher and welcome to my world. And this video is part 3 of my ongoing series on a perspective reboot of Ultimate Marvel. Now I can already confirm that this endeavor has gotten much bigger than I anticipated, but in the best possible way. To understand why, I recommend watching my previous videos on this series, especially the Ultimate Origins video. That's where I laid the general foundation for how this new Ultimate Universe could unfold. On that foundation, I crafted a vision for how the Avengers could assemble within this universe. And I had a lot of fun doing it. But once again, I want to remind everybody that I'm just a fan with a YouTube channel. I'm just offering ideas on how this could happen. I don't claim they're good ideas, or that this is the only way a new Ultimate Universe could manifest. I just want to demonstrate that if a guy like me can come up with a framework for a new Ultimate Marvel, then someone actually working for Marvel can do it 10 times better. And talking about the potential of a rebooted Ultimate Universe has me convinced more than ever that this should happen. This is what Marvel and superhero comics need right now. Simply contemplating a rebooted Ultimate Universe and sharing my ideas has gotten me genuinely excited for the concept. I also expect that excitement to only intensify because in this video, I'm going to share my vision for a new version of Ultimate X-Men. Now, if you've been following my channel for any length of time, you should already know that I am a huge X-Men fan. I've done multiple videos on X-Men. Hell, one of the first videos on this channel was about X-Men. So you can safely assume that I am more motivated than usual to make this awesome. But I'm also more aware of the challenges that entails. Because with respect to a new Ultimate X-Men series, the challenges are more daunting than most. That's because, by almost every measure, no franchise got screwed over more in the previous Ultimate Universe than the X-Men. And no franchise suffered a bigger downturn in terms of overall quality than Ultimate X-Men. Because unlike the Ultimates, Spider-Man, or the Fantastic Four, there was just an overall lack of effort for the later Ultimate X-Men comics. After the fairly well-received run of Brian K. Vaughan, nobody at Marvel seemed to put much planning or vision into Ultimate X-Men anymore. It became distressingly common to see blatant continuity errors that played out in this and other Ultimate books. Then Ultimatum came along, and nearly every major character was callously killed off in the most brutal way possible. All the development and growth that these characters underwent over the first 100 issues, it was all rendered completely meaningless. If you had any fondness for any of those characters, you were shit out of luck. It's really not too surprising that in wake of that event, Ultimate X-Men lost most of its appeal. And the only character who ever got any real attention or development was Kitty Pryde. But that still didn't help. And that's because, and I know I may upset some people by saying this, Ultimate Kitty Pryde turned into the biggest Mary Sue character Marvel has ever produced. And I mean that in the worst possible way. Seriously, the whole series became less about the X-Men and more about how Kitty Pryde was going to be glorified every issue. And I won't mince words. She became fucking insufferable. But as bad as that was, there's one other aspect to Ultimate X-Men that completely derailed it. That was the revelation that mutants, in the former Ultimate Universe, were not a natural phenomenon. They were a byproduct of failed experiments done during World War II. That's right, Ultimate Marvel turned mutants into failed science experiments. They basically turned mutants into the goddamn Inhumans, minus the fancy cloud and the teleporting dog. Now I won't mince words on that either. That was a fucking idiotic idea that completely destroyed the entire point of X-Men. They are supposed to represent minorities and oppressed people who were just born a certain way. Being a failed science experiment is not conducive to that story. And it showed just how many fans lost interest in Ultimate X-Men. Pretty much everything that made the X-Men great was removed, along with the characters that people liked. The series was just never going to succeed with that setup. Now, if it sounds like I'm going on an angry rant, I apologize, but I want to establish what an Ultimate X-Men reboot is up against. Because it was one of those series that started out strong, but lost all semblance of intrigue, more so than any other Ultimate book. On top of that, it found incredibly stupid ways to fail, frustrate, and outrage audiences the longer it went on. For a rebooted Ultimate X-Men, it'll have to do a lot to overcome that baggage. Because after what happened the first time, fans are going to be inherently skeptical of this series, more so than any other rebooted Ultimate title. Even if fans aren't familiar with the bleak history of Ultimate X-Men, they won't be inclined to assume the best for this series. And for Ultimate X-Men to stand out, it has to work a lot harder. It has to go the extra distance. It has to offer something that the current mainline X-Men comics aren't, but in a way that still appeals to longtime fans. That means not killing off major characters and trying to replace them with subpar knockoffs. That means not making everything revolve around Kitty frickin' Pryde or Wolverine or any one X-Men character for that matter. And, most importantly, that means not losing sight of what the X-Men represent and what makes them so endearing. It sounds like a lot, I know, but a rebooted Ultimate Marvel can only succeed by being bolder and thinking bigger. And being a lifelong X-Men fan, who has also written his fair of X-Men fanfiction over the years, I believe I have a vision that will make Ultimate X-Men truly uncanny once more. So, once again, I will channel my inner Uwadu the Watcher and lay out this vision for a new Ultimate X-Men. Think of this as an overview of the first major arc for the series, one that could unfold in the first dozen issues or so. Make this what completely severs ties to the ugly past of the previous Ultimate comics, and from it, build a better, more promising future for Marvel's merry band of mutants. Mutants, freaks, outcasts, menace, danger. These are the common terms often associated with those born with the X genome. Not a single gene or a single change, this genetic anomaly is the defining trait of Homo superior, the next stage in human evolution. While its complete origins remain a mystery, its lineage can be traced back to the earliest days of Homo sapiens. The genome was clearly present in prehistoric humans, but it remained largely inactive and relatively rare. With the dawn of civilization, records of the X genome manifesting quickly appear. They emerge in stories of individuals born with extraordinary abilities. Stories of humans conjuring fire, reading minds, flying through the skies, and developing unusual appearances found their way into myths, legends, and lore. But by the 19th century, the full potential of the X genome came into focus. And through advances in understanding of evolution and genetics, the implications became clear. Mankind was evolving, and the people born with the X genome, mutants as they came to be known, were the next step. Initially, mutation was difficult to study. The genome appeared in some form within every population on the planet, regardless of geography, ethnicity, or race. It was just too random to track. But things changed in the early 20th century when alien technology began crashing on Earth. The tools and insights provided by this technology helped uncover the breadth and scale of the mutant phenomenon. This insight, along with a population boom and 2 world wars, led to a rapid increase in the prevalence of mutants. In just the span of a few decades, the X genome began manifesting in thousands of individuals. Their abilities and appearances varied, but their presence became increasingly difficult to ignore. Many hid their status whenever possible, but some still managed to contribute. There are multiple instances of mutants serving their respective countries in World War II. But a lot changed after the war. The mutant population continued growing, and while S.H.I.E.L.D. remained focused on fighting other threats, a growing mutant population led to more social unrest. This also coincided with the burgeoning civil rights movement. As the public became more aware of mutants, fear and hatred of them also grew. The largest and loudest voice of that fear came from the Humanity Coalition, an international consortium created by industrialist Donald Trask. Together with the guidance of renowned biologist Dr. Nathaniel Essex Jr., he raised awareness of the dangers the mutant population posed. As a result, more and more mutants became the subject of hate, marginalization, and even violence. Fear over what they could do and what they might do led to many young mutants being kicked out of their homes or forced to live in ghettos. To counter this growing bigotry, a new voice arose in Eric Lenscher, a mutant, a Holocaust survivor, and a vocal advocate for mutant civil rights. Alongside his friend and colleague, Brian Xavier, he led numerous protests to counter the Humanity Coalition. He also worked with Xavier to help young mutants all over the world, assisting them with their powers and helping them find supportive communities. Initially, Lenscher aligned himself with the civil rights movement. But while he advocated peaceful resolutions to most conflicts, he also made it a point to train his own secret mutant militia, which came to be known as the Brotherhood of Mutants. While they acted primarily as a defense force, they also demonstrated the power mutants could wield when organized. This ultimately led to Donald Trask taking more extreme measures, believing the momentum of his movement could no longer be stopped through protest and law alone. While working closely with Dr. Essex, he formulated what he believed to be the ultimate solution. He called it the Legacy Plague, a virus specifically meant to infect and kill mutants. Believing it to be the only way to guard humanity's future, Trask planned to release the virus in a 1963 protest in Washington, D.C. However, word of his plan leaked to Eric Lenscher, and despite Dr. Essex warning him the virus wasn't ready, Trask rushed to release it before Lenscher could get to him. Knowing time was short, Eric and the Brotherhood of Mutants attempted to stop him. A fight ensued, but Trask brought with him a squad of heavily armed followers who called themselves Sentinels. And at one point, Brian Xavier confronted Trask and urged him not to release the virus. He tried to appeal to his humanity, even telling him about his infant son, Charles. But it was no use. Donald Trask, driven by hate and fear, released the virus. That day, which came to be known as M-Day, led to the near extinction of mutants. In the span of just 18 months, the virus swept across the planet, causing countless mutants to fall ill and die. Some had extreme reactions, causing their powers to become unstable and their appearances to become more and more inhuman. All this death and destruction was captured by the media, and it also drew the ire of S.H.I.E.L.D., who went on to arrest Donald Trask and denounce the Humanity Coalition as a terrorist organization. In the end, approximately 16 million mutants died. And around this same time, Eric Lenscher and his Brotherhood disappeared. Mutants became a tragedy wrapped in an atrocity. And while the civil rights movement made progress for other minorities, the future for mutants became very uncertain. Flash forward to the present day. The horrors of M-Day have become an afterthought for the most part. Many humans still attempt to downplay it, going so far as to remove it from textbooks and records. And the surviving mutants still live in constant fear, often hiding their mutations whenever possible. But it only became more difficult when the mutant population began growing once more. And just like before, it raised major concerns. Even though the Legacy Plague was said to have burned itself out, a lingering fear remained that it could reemerge, and possibly mutate to infect humans. As a result, it remained distressingly common for mutants who revealed themselves to be marginalized. Most of those mutants ended up in what came to be known as X districts. They cropped up in countries all over the world, functioning like Native American reservations, areas in which mutants could live, congregate, and coexist among one another. But their interactions among humans was severely limited, both by laws and by general bigotry. One of the largest X districts was in Westchester, New York, the former residence of Brian Xavier and home to his son, Charles Xavier. Following his father's legacy, and being a mutant himself, Charles attempts to help many vulnerable mutants. Using his family fortune, as well as resources provided by a private hedge fund, Euro Capital, he attempts to build a better future for their kind. But he also seeks to learn from past mistakes. In addition to homes, hospitals, schools, and communities, Xavier creates a defense task force, which come to be known as the X-Men. He recruits volunteers in Scott Summers, Jean Grey, Aurora Monroe, Kurt Wagner, Bobby Drake, and Pyotr Rasputin. They're all trained for combat by Charles's longtime associates, John Proudstar, Raven Darkholme, and Sean Cassidy. Initially, this team is tasked with protecting vulnerable mutants from protesters and hate mobs. They also confront the remnants of the Humanity Coalition, who remain active and highly invested in mutant extinction, despite being labeled terrorists. But everything changes the day a feral mutant named Wolverine is sent to murder Charles Xavier and the entire board of Euro Capital. The X-Men are able to stop him, and in doing so, they discover that someone has erased this man's memories and warped his mind, turning him into a living weapon. While volatile and untrusting at first, Wolverine agrees to help Xavier track down whoever sent him. That effort leads them right back to the Humanity Coalition, which is now run by Bolivar Trask, son of the late Donald Trask. They learn that he is about to unleash a new weapon on mutants. He calls them Sentinels, in honor of the same guardians that his father once employed. These giant humanoid robots are built with resilience and survivability in mind. They're programmed to adapt to various mutant powers, counter them, and build better versions of themselves with the accumulated knowledge. Most importantly, they're programmed to only hunt mutants, doing so with a special mutant tracking technology that can detect the X genome. But in their attempts to stop him, the X-Men learn that someone helped Bolivar Trask build these monstrosities, a man who called himself Max Eisenhardt. He helped develop the mutant tracking technology. They anxiously press Trask for answers, but after scanning his mind, Charles Xavier discovers something shocking, something that even Bolivar didn't know. Eric Lenscher, his father's old friend, is still alive, except now he goes by a different title, Magneto. Somehow, Eric survived the Legacy Plague. He even somehow found a way to defy aging, appearing as healthy as he was in 1963. He also reformed his Brotherhood of Mutants, now consisting of Toad, Blob, Pyro, Frenzy, Lorelei, and his two grandchildren, Quicksilver and the Scarlet Witch. And together, they plan to inflict the same atrocity on humanity that was once inflicted upon them. A battle ensues between the X-Men and the Brotherhood. Bolivar prepares to launch the Sentinels to stop them, but Charles Xavier confronts him, urging him not to. And unlike his father, Bolivar Trask is a lot more torn. He's reminded of all the pain and suffering that others endured, and whether he can live with causing more. But he also hasn't forgotten the danger that mutants pose, or the incentive they have to seek revenge. But before Bolivar Trask can decide, he's attacked by Magneto. In the process, the Sentinels are activated and the first wave is launched. But, much to Bolivar's horror, Magneto hacked the Sentinel programming. Rather than targeting mutants, they would only target humans without the X genome. The Sentinels soon begin their attack. They descend on Washington, D.C., the same side as M-Day no less, and they start targeting humans. As the destruction unfolds, the X-Men attempt to protect the humans and fight off the Sentinels. But the Brotherhood tries to make them stand down, urging them to join their cause. The X-Men refuse, and they're eventually able to subdue the Brotherhood. And while the Sentinels inflict damage and suffering on innocent humans, Charles Xavier makes sure Bolivar sees it. He makes sure he bears witness to his creations attacking humans with the same atrocity that his father attacked mutants. It has the desired effect. In his disgust, Bolivar Trask agrees to shut them down. He reveals that he kept the self-destruct code in every Sentinel, one that would reverse their adaptive abilities. He calls it the Master Mold Protocol, and with help from Hank McCoy, he's able to activate it. However, Magneto attempts to kill Trask before he can. But Charles Xavier jumps in front just in time and suffers a severe injury, one that renders him paralyzed from the waist down. And as Xavier falls injured, the protocols become active and cause all the Sentinels to self-destruct. Magneto still attempts to salvage them, but he's eventually taken down by the X-Men. S.H.I.E.L.D. finally arrives on the scene and is able to contain Magneto. Boulevard Trask does have a chance to flee, but he chooses not to and turns himself in, ready and willing to face justice for his crimes. In the days that follow, news spreads about the plot to commit another mutant genocide. The X-Men are widely praised for their effort to protect humans and mutants alike. S.H.I.E.L.D. even announces a partnership with the X-Men to combat anti-mutant efforts and other mutant-related threats, of which there are still plenty. And as part of that reconciliation, multiple governments begin to support and develop X-districts. Charles Xavier, now confined to a wheelchair, becomes the face of that effort. Through resources donated by S.H.I.E.L.D., he constructs a facility in the heart of the Westchester X-district, which he calls the Xavier Institute for Mutant Development. In his initial announcement of that effort, he highlights a dream he had, one he explored while recovering in a hospital. It was a beautiful dream in which humans and mutants lived in peace, helping one another become the best they could be. He is now determined to make that dream real. But while many cheer him on, some still remain skeptical. With Magneto confined to a plastic prison cell, his Brotherhood remains at large, and their message still resonates with many. Some are already reaching out to those mutants, and they do so under a mysterious alias, Sinister. Excuse me while I once again catch my breath. That went a lot longer than I anticipated, but like I said, a rebooted Ultimate X-Men has to be ambitious. To that end, I tried to check as many boxes as I could with respect to world building the X-Men in a novel way. I can easily imagine the first 3 or 4 issues showing past and present events, something Ultimate did a lot in the early days. That'll help tie these events together, giving context and depth as to who the X-Men are in this world, as well as the situation that mutants find themselves in. Because the most important detail I wanted to establish is that mutants are not a failed science experiment. That's one aspect of the former Ultimate comics that should not be mirrored in any way, shape, or form. In this universe, mutants are, just like their mainline counterparts, a product of human evolution. In that context, mutants are human. They've always been part of humanity, just like race, gender, blood type, etc. But beyond that, I wanted to reveal how the X-Men emerged in this world. Because in most iterations, the story starts with the X-Men having already formed. There's really not much in terms of explaining the how and why they became the merry band of mutants we all know and love. I think a rebooted Ultimate X-Men should tell a different kind of story. Moreover, it also has an opportunity to reshape and reimagine the entire mutant struggle. Most of the time, the X-Men story begins with them being on the front lines of this ongoing struggle for peace and understanding between humans and mutants. But in this rebooted Ultimate universe, they face a different kind of struggle. Before anyone ever dons an X-Men uniform, mutants suffered an egregious atrocity. They're nearly wiped out in this massive attack, and they're pushed to the brink of extinction, something that has happened more than once in the mainline comics. But that's only the beginning of the X-Men struggle in this world. This time around, mutants are a minority who suffer a heinous atrocity, one perpetuated by hateful, bigoted, fearful humans. Their population is hit so hard that they must fight to rebuild what they lost, and fight even harder to build a better future. And it's from this fight that the X-Men emerge. They don't just represent a team of mutant superheroes. They actually represent the side that seeks peace with all humanity, rather than retribution for the crimes committed by a select few. I believe this more closely parallels the struggles of race relations in the real world. And through that dynamic, it could bring out the best in the X-Men, as well as everyone around them, including their enemies. There are still some details that need to be developed, namely the characterization and team dynamics that's so critical to the X-Men. Like, how does Wolverine's story fit into all this? What is Weapon X like in this world? What about Mr. Sinister, the Hellfire Club, the Phoenix Force, or the Purifiers? What kind of backstories do Storm, Cyclops, Jean Grey, and the rest of the team have? How do they contrast with their mainline counterparts? Also, who's dating who? Who falls in love with who? While I would love to dig into those soap opera elements that has always been a hallmark of X-Men comics, I feel like this video has already run a bit too long. I'll leave it to my fellow X-Men and Marvel fans to simply take this setup that I provided and imagine the uncanny stories that could be told within it. And while X-Men fans entertain those ideas, I'll continue with the next part of my vision for a rebooted Ultimate Marvel. And in the next video, I'll attempt to reimagine an Ultimate version of the Fantastic Four, Marvel's first family and most famous team of intrepid explorers. Stay tuned for that video as I bring more fantastic elements into this vision for a rebooted Ultimate Marvel. And also please take the time to offer comments and feedback on this and the rest of my rebooted Ultimate musings. Thanks for watching, everyone, and thanks for joining me in my world. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, take care and stay safe.